Thank you, everybody, for joining us. This is a District 5 United meeting. The topic of this meeting is the future of Reid Hillview Airport, and we have Harry Freitas.
I'm the director of the county's Roads and Airports Department.
All right, thank you for making time for us today.
Sure.
And we'll go ahead and start whenever you'd like. We will answer questions or allow Q&A at the end of the presentation.
Okay, going to get started?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, you can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to work with you on what's happening out at Reid Hillview Airport right now. Because it's a small group, I'd like it to be interactive and hopefully a lot of questions and answers. One of the things that's very important to the county right now is to get good public participation. Obviously, that's been extremely limited and affected by the shelter-in-place, the coronavirus, and we were challenged by that, and so we're trying to do virtual outreach. There's a couple of things that I'm going to lead up to a request of you that is very important. So we have prepared a community survey in response to our last community meeting on the future of Reid Hillview. And I'm very interested if anybody on this call has not done that survey to try to get you to take that survey at the conclusion of this call. That would be really helpful for us. We want to get the most participation we possibly can from the community that surrounds Reid Hillview. And there's a video that accompanies that. I guess the most important thing, and I have some slides prepared, and we can kind of talk through that, but I don't know how well up to speed you are on the situation at Reid Hillview. So I don't want to take up too much time, so let me maybe just start from a few factual things and then talk about the situation that we find ourselves in today. So the Reid Hillview Airport, the county in December of 2018, the Board of Supervisors voted decided to tell the county administration to do a number of things about the airport. And there's a list of 13 of them, and I can share them with you. The most important ones, though, are the number one thing that they told us to do was to not accept federal grants for the airport. That's a very important step that the county has to take if the county desires to close the airport. And the reason for that is because federal grants, the acceptance of grants involves the county signing a contract with the federal government. It says they'll keep the airport open for 20 years. And the last time that the county took a grant was 2011. So I'm going to share my screen right now and pull up a couple of slides that I think are helpful. So let me do that and just kind of walk through the grant situation. So let me share this. Okay, so can you all, Juan, can you verify that you can see my presentation? Okay. I'm going to just go through this. This is a presentation that we gave to the Board of Supervisors when they made the decision not to accept grants. But the most important thing in this presentation, I want to share with you a couple of slides about grants. These are some facts about federal grants. The federal grant system for airports is similar to the federal grant system for railroads and highways. Once you take these grants for your railroads, your trains, whether it's BART, if you take federal money for BART or whatever, you promise to use it for what you took it for, and you promise to operate the system for a period of time. And this is the Reid Hillview Airport with its 2 runways, and we're looking north towards we're looking south from the sky towards Eastridge. Almost all airports in the country take grants, and they're for capital improvements. So they're not for operating the airport, they're for pavement, lighting, infrastructure, aircraft control towers, fencing, anything that helps with the operation of the airport. But not for, excuse me, not helps with the operation of the airport, helps with the airport's infrastructure. It doesn't pay for the people who work there, and it doesn't pay for hangars for people to park their airplanes. It's not for buildings, it's for the runways and stuff like that. So the last time the grants were given to the County of Santa Clara or accepted by the County of Santa Clara was in 2011. So as you can see, we haven't taken grants in quite some time. We're approaching almost 10 years into having not taken grants. That's really important. The grants obligate the county to keep the airport open. And the last grant we took was in 2011, which means that the county is contractually required to keep the airport open until 2031, which seems like a long time, but it's not that long. The grant assurances, as I said, they last for 20 years and they expire in 2031. They require us to operate the airport to FAA standards. So we have to operate it in conformance with a set of rules that are written down in the grants. Without the grant, the county may gain more local control. This is what we told the Board of Supervisors. And when I say may, the federal government is going to be very resistant to giving up control of the airport, and they're using their powers to manipulate things as best they can to try to force the county to accept a grant. For instance, they recently wrote us some letters telling us that we needed to fix lighting and signage out there, knowing that it would cost money and that the Board of Supervisors would have to spend, general fund money on fixing the airfield. As I said, it's a 20-year operation. It requires us to keep operating the airport, and we have to follow the FAA regulations. The FAA regulations, as I described, are to keep the airport open. There's another thing that's very important for everybody to understand is that because local communities were trying some local communities throughout the United States were trying to gain more control over their airport, like put in things like curfews or restrict the hours at night. The federal government, the Congress, somehow passed the Airport Noise and Capacity Act. It's called Noise and Capacity Act, but it's really about getting even more control of the FAA over the public airports in the United States. And it says that even if we didn't have a grant, we would have a real hard time restricting the public's use of the airport. Now, this is something that the county will probably very likely challenge if it wants to, if it proceeds with closure of the airport. So with that, I want to close this window and then just talk about, let's see, stop share, kind of talk about what the Board of Supervisors asked us to do and what we've been doing. So, as I said, the most important thing that they told us to do was not take grants, and we haven't taken any grants that require obligations to keep the airport open since 2011. The two things that we're working on right now that they've asked us to do, one is an envisioning plan for what the land use, what the airport could be used for if it was closed. So we're in the middle of that, and that's what I need your help with. And the other thing that we're currently working on, I'm not actually working on it personally, but the county is a study of the production of what the impacts or effect on the community are from airborne lead, because the aircraft that use small airports use leaded fuel, leaded gasoline. And my colleague Sylvia Gallegos, who's a deputy county executive, she's my boss. She's actually leading that because it involves doctors and public health officials and the state of California's public health department. So it's kind of out of my expertise area where I work on kind of operating the airport and engineering. I don't have much experience with public health. But the schedule for completion of the two studies that we're currently working on is we're going to actually try to get to the Board of Supervisors in the September timeframe to complete the land use plan. And Sylvia had previously had a schedule of December of this year to complete the lead study. Now, I don't know if that's been affected because the public health officials have been tied up in this COVID-19 response. I really need to check on whether or not that schedule has changed. So we did hold a public meeting about the land use planning before, it was probably in February, I would guess, just before the shelter-in-place order was done. And then we created a video that asks folks to re-engage with the land use planning process, and if they wouldn't mind filling out a survey at the end of the video. So I have that next. But with that, Juan, if you don't mind, should turn it over to you for any questions before I maybe run the video. But it's really up to the group.
Yes, and let me point out, everybody, that if you have any questions, please use the Q&A feature. Somehow I set up this webinar not correctly, so only one person can be on camera, and so that's Harry, so you won't see me. It turns out I can't turn my camera back on anymore, but I can read the questions. And so far what we've got are, the first question is, what restrictions does the FAA put on the city-county with regard to closure? What remedies do they seek for violations?
Sure. So I actually was able to open these so I can read them myself, which is awesome. Nobody else can talk on this one. They have to submit their questions in writing. Is that how it works?
Correct.
Okay. Well, that one just went away. Let me try to answer that. So as long as the grant assurances are active, which is, they call it the grant assurances, it's a contract. The federal government says, do you want this money to fix the airport? When we took that money in 2011 to do paving out there, we signed a contract with them to keep the airport open for 20 years. So I think that it's pretty hard to get out of that. Our attorneys have advised us of that. So I think the violations, to close the airport without, kind of permission or doing it kind of in a legal way, I think the remedies would have to be in the courts, and I assume the FAA would just take us to court. And those are the violations if we attempted to close it without doing it, I'd say, properly by going through channels and doing it through the airport closure process.
Okay, and so the next question is, may I forward the survey to neighbors?
Absolutely. So when I send this, I can forward the links. Juan, I believe you were on the list with the links to all the videos. So if you can forward it to the group, but I'll play the video here, but I'll figure out a way of getting it to the group. At the end of the video, you just click on, in the YouTube video, it's embedded in it. You just click on the link and it takes you right into the survey.
All right, thank you. And next question, what accommodations has a county made to make unleaded fuel available at the airport thus far? I understand many aircraft can use unleaded gas, but it has historically been hard to get ethanol-free unleaded fuel.
That's a super technical question. I'll do my best to answer it without sounding too nerdy. So there is unleaded fuel available at the airport. Not very many aircraft use it because the engines weren't made to use that fuel except on certain aircraft. If a person who owns an airplane wants to convert their plane to use unleaded fuel, they have to go through a process and get a certificate that their motor on their aircraft has been modified properly to use the unleaded fuel. And then once they have that certificate, they can run that aircraft on unleaded fuel. Now, not all aircraft can be modified sufficiently. Well, let me say it differently. I think they all could be done, but I think it's very expensive, I think, on some aircraft especially I think the older ones. Some of the aircraft, the newer aircraft, are made for unleaded fuel. The FAA recognizes that leaded fuel is a problem all over the country, so they've been working on trying to develop a formulation for gasoline that can replace leaded gasoline without damaging the aircraft motors, but they haven't been successful at doing that yet.
All right, thank you. Next question, and for everybody, all the participants, please do pose questions using the Q&A feature. So next question is Lauren Benj, and she says, what did you mean by general funds being used for lighting and signage repairs? Does that mean county funds versus the funds from the FAA contract?
That's right. So this year, the FAA wrote us a series of letters about deficiencies with the signage on the airport that direct the aircraft around. And there's a couple of signs that don't meet standards. And it's more than a couple. It's about, I think, about 8 locations where the signs need to be fixed. It's not that the FAA tried to make a statement that they were unsafe. Our position is not that they're unsafe. Our position is that they don't meet standards. I'll give you an example of that. You know, Caltrans changes the rules of the road and maybe says that in this case, the stripe on the road used to be 4 inches wide, now it needs to be 6 inches. So when Caltrans changes their standards to a 6-inch stripe, that doesn't mean that every road in the United States that has a 4-inch stripe is unsafe. It means that that road doesn't meet the current standards. Well, the FAA changed their standards, and our signs met standards for many years, but they just said, well, this one is not, the distance from the runway is too far, or it's not angled right, or just details like that. So in response to that, the county is going to have to fix those signs this year, and we're going to fix them without FAA money. We're going to fix them with our own money. So that's what I meant by we're not taking any FAA money to fix those things. But the FAA is sending us letters. They're going to continually send us and try to point out any deficiencies in the airport that they can, because they don't like what we're doing.
Got it. Next one is from Trudy, who asks, or who says, implore further exploration of minimizing retail use and retaining emergency and educational use.
Yeah, and this is really about the land use plan, and we'd like to hear from you on our survey. So I'm going to run that video near the end, and then this is exactly what we've laid out all these plans that show, okay, there's 180 acres at Reid Hillview. If it weren't an airport, what could it be? It can be housing, retail, industrial, education, medical. It can be all. It can be parks, open space, roads, schools. Like I said. And her comment is, minimize retail and use it for emergency and educational use. And I think that that's a great comment, and you'll be able to do that in that survey that I took.
All right, next. Is it part of the plan to allow the planes to operate? If so, who will control the operating times and paths, etc.? The flight path has recently changed, and they're flying lower over our houses and banking much sooner after taking off, seeming much more at risk.
Yeah, so the way it works is we don't have anything in our plan that allows us to change the way the planes operate, because the kind of the rules are that when planes, we operate, but once it's in the air, it becomes kind of an FAA rules and the tower. I did not know they changed some operations recently. They have a lot of freedom to drive to pilot their aircraft the way they want, but I'd like to learn more about that. But we don't have any authority over that right now. That's kind of out of the county's. Once that plane kind of leaves the airport, we can't tell it what to do.
Okay, next question. What are the county's considerations on the business impacted by closing the airport? What about the county's obligation to use KRHV as a reliever airport for San Jose?
Yeah, so, the businesses impacted by closing the airport are, there's a lot of impacts that can be described. Right now, there's some businesses at the airport that provide flight training. They provide fuel, aircraft maintenance, aircraft sales, and those are called fixed-based operators. Right now, we have, depending on how you count the services, we have probably about 4 of those businesses out there. There's actually 9 parcels, but some of them have been combined and some of them aren't actually providing any aviation services anymore because they're really old leases. If you could leave the question up, Juan, so I can look at it again before it keeps getting deleted as soon as I start answering it. But what was the second part of that question? What are we going to do? Oh, the reliever airport part. Yeah. So that's a fact. So one of the functions of general aviation airports in the United States, some of them are described as relievers. That means that they function as an airport that's supposed to take small aircraft away from large airports. So the Reid Hillview Airport is designated by the FAA and has been for a really long time as a reliever for Mineta Airport. So, that has to be addressed somehow. And I don't know, the Board of Supervisors hasn't decided to close the airport. They're just evaluating things. And one of the things that they asked us to do if we get closer to that type of decision would be having to evaluate through probably some environmental studies what the impacts would be on Mineta.
Okay. And at any time you can go to the answer tab on the Q&A document to see the questions, but thank you for
I see. Great, thank you. I'm new to this too. Thank you so much.
Oh, no problem. And thank you for letting me know I shouldn't.
No, this is really good. I'm new to this. I apologize.
All right. So
Okay.
Next question, Kimberly Irwin says, what is your primary goal right now? Getting public feedback, ? It seems that there's plenty of time. My concern is that developers will swoop in and make the east side even more crowded.
I think our primary goal right now is to try to get the community understanding what the possibilities are on 180 acres. One of the other things that we hope to get out of this part of the study is to develop a ongoing community feedback and participation system as we go through this process. So whatever happens, we would like to figure out how the community can continue to participate in the conversations around the airport and have meaningful dialogue with the community. Because you're exactly right. I mean, nobody can tell you what would be the right land use 10 years from now. Development kind of doesn't work that way. I think we know generally, that it's probably a mix of uses because it's so large. But public feedback and then standing up a long-term, like maybe Reid Hillview advisory group that could advise us and we could have a connection to the community that way. Those are our primary goals.
All right. And I think that's a great idea for getting the feedback. So next question is from Allison. Does the county stand ready to continue to make the recommended safety and other updates that will be needed to keep the airport safe and up to standards?
Yeah, so the thing that we asked for this year was funding for the lighting and signage. And then, we had paved the airport 2 years ago. And now I think next year we're going to look at additional paving in the taxi lanes in between the tie downs and the hangars and the shelters. The pavement in there is in pretty poor condition, so that's kind of the next improvement that we're going to make. I mean, I don't think, you know, if there was a safety issue out there, we would fix it immediately. And if that were an issue, we would just fix that immediately. So I think it's mostly what we're talking about is maintenance. And yeah, the county is committed to maintaining the airport to standards.
All right. Next question, again from Allison.
Oh, yeah, this is Allison, yeah.
The FAA monitors air safety and makes safety recommendations based on learning from accidents. Runway incursions have been a problem, and pilots and the public need to be protected. Such improvements should be expected to continue. It is not necessarily malicious. It is also safety for the public.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, we hold yearly runway safety incursion meetings with airport staff, the tower, and the pilots and the FBOs. We've had many of those, and we have had incursions. Incursions mean when either a vehicle or an aircraft is essentially in the wrong place on the airport. That's an incursion. That's a serious safety issue. Now, the purpose of the runway incursion safety team meetings every year is to determine why the incursions are occurring. So what has to happen is we all have to agree that there's a correlation between physical improvements or physical deficiencies at the airport and why the incursion happened. Some incursions occur because human error. Some incursions occur because radio issues. Some incursions occur because the way the tower describes what is happening, the way the tower is giving instructions. Some incursions occur due to mechanical issues. So what we do is we look at all the incursions that occur and constantly evaluate them to see if we can see patterns. And thus far, we have not come to any agreement that we have a physical issue that's leading to repeated incursions as a result of the layout of the signage or striping on the airport. But there have been a number of incursions, and it's all documented. I'm glad to share those reports with you as well. They're public.
All right, and as we keep answering questions, I will be sure to send a link to the survey to everybody that registered so that you could share it with all your friends and neighbors to provide additional feedback. Next question is, if you haven't taken funds in about 10 years and you're proposing that general funds would need to be used, I assume that the original grant money has been completely burned through. How long does this typically last? Are these typically quickly used and gone for the next 20 years with no long-term sustainment plan?
That's a very insightful question. The way the feds work is they don't want you to just take cash and not tell them what you're going to use it for. So you have to prepare a grant application and say exactly what you're going to use it for. So our last grant, the grants are typically used the same year they're received on a construction project. So the last grants that we took in 2011, we spent them on a construction project that year. And every year the FAA, through an authorization by Congress, authorizes more money to the United States airport system. We haven't applied for any grants since 2011. In addition to that, they also offer just a very small amount, like $150,000 per airport. It's called entitlement funds. Those also require the execution of a grant agreement. So we haven't taken our entitlement funds either since 2011. The entitlement funds are $150,000 per year per airport. Now, what we've been able to do is use those. We're using those entitlement funds right now for the South County Airport because we can switch them from airport to airport, but we haven't used them at Reid Hillview.
All right. This question's from me then. It seems like the county in 2011 decided to remove the leverage of grants for the future. Is that what the county did? So that the county, no, okay.
Let me explain that to you because it's really kind of an ironic story. So, and this is a really important kind of funny story, and it's very ironic. In 2011, a business tried to open a skydiving operation at the South County Airport. And we asked them to provide the county insurance to make sure that this, you know, if you know where the South County Airport is, it's in San Martin next to 101. I hope everybody, I know you can't answer, so I can't say, does everybody know where that is? So the county and its lawyers and its airport department, I wasn't here, said you need to provide insurance to make sure that, you know, if you drop people onto 101 or if they get tangled up in airplanes that are going to Mineta, which is the flight path, we don't think a skydiving operation is a good idea at South County Airport. That's in 2011. We weren't able to come to an agreement with the operator, and we wouldn't give them a permit to operate at South County Airport. So the FAA sued the county because we violated the grant agreement. They said that we were discriminating against the legitimate airport use. And it took about 7 years, took about 5 years, five or 6 years, let me say, to settle that lawsuit. So in 2011, we stopped taking grants. The reason why is because the FAA refused to give them to us. So they said, we're gonna punish you because you don't allow skydiving at South County. Well, meanwhile, 7 years goes by, and they finally said, well, here, we settled the lawsuit. We allowed skydiving at South County Airport, which lasted for a year, and then the operator either went broke or the business went out of business. And by that time, I think the county started thinking, well, wait a second, you know, the FAA really tries to tell us what to do, and we kind of don't like it, so let's just hold off and figure out what's going on here. So the ironic thing about this is that this whole issue with not taking grants was caused by the FAA refusing to give us grants for about 7 years, somewhere between 5 and 7 years.
All right. Next question. Have you considered asking the city of San Jose to take over operation of Reid Hillview and possibly Morgan Hill?
No. I think the city has no interest in it. We haven't really asked them. Morgan Hill and San Martin communities also don't really, you know, they aren't really pro-airport. I don't think that has really been asked formally. My suspicion is they probably wouldn't want it.
Next question. What happens to Little League Field if airport closes?
Well, I think that they would just stay there for a period of time until the airport was rebuilt. I would imagine that anything that would go on that parcel would be able to accommodate the Little League.
All right. Next question. Is there any up-to-date information on the toxic chemicals found on the Reid Hillview site and the emissions over the neighborhood?
I don't think there's any toxic chemicals that we know of in the traditional sense, like leaking tanks or anything like that. There is, you know, lead on the surface of the soil, but the emissions study, which is the airborne lead study, as I said, that's something that Sylvia Gallegos is working on, and that is scheduled to be completed, and it's going to be taken to the Board of Supervisors in the December timeframe. At least that's the current schedule, the last schedule.
Okay, I'm gonna mix up the questions. I'm going to the last one. First, I'll read the question and then I'll just make a comment. The question is, why doesn't the survey have any options for improving the airport, taking FAA grant money, supporting airport businesses, including disaster response firefighting, a San Jose State University Aviation College program, etc.? And then, is the survey exhaustive in the sense that the respondent could add a suggestion if none is listed?
Yeah, there's an opportunity to do that. Now, this is really important. What we did was the survey isn't about what you want to see out at the airport. The survey is really for people who attended the first meeting, and it's asking them, is this what we heard from you? Because we think we heard these things, and we lay it out in the video. This is what you told us at the last meeting. This is what we heard. This is what we're proposing on putting in the report. Did we hear you correctly? But there is an opportunity for you to weigh in on some additional things.
This is just my personal comment. You may want to survey people who didn't attend the first one, perhaps who watch your video, because I don't know if there's any way to reach the people who attended the first one. Absolutely.
Yeah, we've actually sent an email to every single person that attended the first meeting and asked them to watch the video, because we have a really exhaustive mailing list. So
okay, yeah,
we sent out tons of video. And that video and survey is available in English, Vietnamese, and Spanish.
All right. And so for everybody participating, you can watch the video and respond to the survey as well. And it sounds like definitely include additional input if a question doesn't ask you what you need. Next question, incursions, as you said, I'm at the bottom. Incursions, as you said, are.
Why aren't you? Did we miss Lauren's question? Or
let me go back up. Okay, Lauren says, thank you for your response. Is it that signage and lighting is not meeting standards, or that some are actually broken from age, environmental impacts and mowing, etc.? Also, if each contract with the FAA lasts 20 years, I'm guessing the money still matches that contract. So should there not be FAA funds still?
Yeah, again, like I was saying, I'll answer the second part first. They give us money for specific things. So if we say we want money for paving, they say, you can pave your runway, here's a couple $1 million, but and we spend it. We spend it that year, we pave it, we get a contractor out there, but they say, if you pave it and take this money, you gotta keep it open for 20 years. So there's no money left, generally. Are broken from age, environmental impacts, and mowing. I mean, yes, they do get hit by the lawnmowers, but nothing out there is actually broken. We're having trouble with parts. If you fly at the airport, this is the answer to Lauren, but they should not be broken. Some of them are not perfect. They've been hit. But they all should work, and the lights work in all of them, unless you can report that they don't. But we check that kind of stuff every day. We do a walkthrough of the airport.
All right. Next question. Among the development plans, is there consideration for a hybrid plan that permits the airport to remain open, but reimagines parks, education, retail, and other uses that are compatible with the airport's existence? If not, could that be added to the menu of proposals and potentially sidestep the issue of being at odds with the FAA and state?
Yeah, we have heard a lot about what can be a minimum airport. I think that's totally within the realm of possibility. I don't know how easily that's going to be to do. Right now, it's a dual runway airport, and it's one of the busiest kind of airports in the country, so it definitely would have to downsize. But there's also talk about aviation education as a, I mean, San Jose State's out there, obviously, but aviation education as being something that is important out there.
All right, next question. Through shelter in place, why have assuredly non-essential businesses like the flight school continued to operate? As a community, we've had no collective result from noise nuisance complaints against the property and businesses.
Yeah, so all the flight schools are closed. That means that the ones that are in businesses out there, that doesn't mean that flight training isn't occurring, because pilots need to fly aircraft to get minimum numbers of hours to keep their licenses going. So that can be viewed as training. But the flight schools have been closed. They can't meet the shelter in place and the social distancing requirements, and are not considered an essential business. We've checked on each and every one of those. Now, we had some scofflaws and people who were bending the rules. And if you feel like a flight school is open, you need to contact airport management. I can give you the number. We will go out there and we will enforce that. We'll get the sheriff out there if we have to. Okay, but it's so the repair of the aircraft has been deemed essential. So the businesses out there that still do repair and fueling and supplies, those are open, but the flight training has been closed.
All right. Next question is, what airport in the area could be considered a reliever airport for SJC? Do you know if there are any airfields in close proximity that can take that load?
I don't, the Reid Hillview Airport is a pretty busy airport. And San Martin only has one runway, and it doesn't have even enough parking. If airports are improved, and if the load is distributed across a number of airports, I don't think that that's the issue. But I think that the issue is that there's 475 aircraft currently based at Reid Hillview, and I don't think there's really adequate parking for those airports. But the airports that are in closest proximity to Reid Hillview, to the south is San Martin, and then Hollister and Watsonville. And then and there's actually one in Salinas. And then moving to the north up the peninsula is San Carlos Airport. And then moving up to the East Bay side, there's Hayward and Livermore. Those are, I think I named most of the ones that I can think of.
All right, Kimberly Irwin notes, I volunteer to be on that advisory board if needed. And so what I can do is everyone who registered, I can send an email with whatever message you'd like to provide, Harry, including the link to the video in case they didn't participate.
Sure.
A link to the survey.
I think, this has to, in order to set up that board, or whatever we want to call it, this is going to have to be directed by the Board of Supervisors when we go with our report. And so I'm not in a position to be allocating seats on that to anybody. That's not my role. But this is going to be the opportunity when it goes to the Board of Supervisors. And I will definitely keep the mailing list that we have updated, and you as well, Juan, to any way that I can, so that the community stays updated. All members of the community is updated when this goes to the Board of Supervisors.
All right, next from Jennifer Watson, is there an ongoing or planned study for the deployment of the airport as up-to-date or modern airport for the future, or is the plan just to repurpose the land for development?
We don't have a plan to kind of modernize the airport. Yeah.
Okay. Next, we have residents continually launching fireworks into the flight path of the aircraft at Reid Hillview. The safety hazards to the community are many. What organization can we leverage to get a competent response to mitigate fireworks in the communities adjacent to the airport? It seems that the FAA should be interested in mitigating this.
This is just, this fireworks situation is really, really terrible. It's just terrible. It's all over everywhere. It's in every community that I know of, and people are very irresponsible. And the police aren't able to enforce it. They try, but this is just too sporadic, and I don't know. I don't know the answer. I think that's terrible. That's really dangerous. I will make a note, and we'll check with the tower tomorrow. Eric, our airport manager, and I will check with the tower tomorrow to see if they're getting those reports and what the federal government is doing to try to. This is a very difficult thing to catch people doing this. I know that the city of San Jose struggles with this mightily, and it's just been getting worse and worse every year, and it really bothers me. But I don't know what to do about it.
All right. Next, incursions, as you said, are a serious safety issue that can lead to deadly consequences. Are there any plans on correcting the repeating incursions due to the county's human error or lack of safety culture?
I think that's a loaded question from Lauren. you know, I don't think we have a lack of safety culture, and human error does occur through pilots. You know, once the aircraft is rolling, and when they're in the taxiway, they're making their own decisions, and then they have to communicate with the tower once they cross over into in the taxi lane. Excuse me. Once they cross over into the taxiway, we've had vehicular incursions from vendors at the airport. We've had pilots drive their vehicles onto the taxiway. These are human errors. I have not been able to pinpoint that there's things that we can fix physically. Now remember, we don't direct the aircraft, the FAA does. And before that, it's the pilot's responsibility to operate the aircraft in a safe manner. So what we look for in incursions is something we can fix. And so we're looking at fixing the signs right now because, okay, somebody's pointed it out to us, and we're going to make them brighter. They're going to have LED lights in them, and hopefully they'll be more visible. Okay.
All right, next one. If the airport is reduced to minimal operations, have you considered the impact to South County, San Martin, which would surely see huge surges in demand, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, when you talk about demand, the demand for the runway, you know, during peak periods, there would probably have to be some, you know, there would have to be probably a tower built in South County. And during peak periods, there will have to be proper air traffic control. The runway capacity, you know, even though Reid Hillview has 2 runways, only one of them has navigation controls. And, you know, usually one of the runways at Reid Hillview is the majority used. But certainly there isn't enough hangars and parking and ground services and air traffic control at South County. So, you know, the thing is that this is a 10-year away decision. So, you know, it's not like anything like this is going to happen tomorrow. So there has to be planning and investments in South County to deal with where the aircraft would go if they don't use Reid Hillview.
All right, next, with regard to flight schools, we experience daily flights by the same multiple aircraft by sound and behavior on a very regular schedule. There must be some sort of organized behavior operating out of the facility and on a daily basis. We cannot account for whom is flying. Can the airport account for the tail numbers flying there?
Yeah, we can account for the tail numbers if you can provide them to us. There is tracking on the tail numbers through the tower. There is, excuse me. There are aviation clubs out there that have fractional ownership of aircraft. So what that means is that folks belong to this aviation club, and they then, by paying the monthly dues and they belong to this club, they get access to their aircraft that are owned by the owner of this flight club. And you can rent the aircraft, the different type of aircraft, and use them, and you can also use them for your own personal training. So that, because there's no, I don't think I haven't seen that is a restricted activity, but you know, I can certainly respond to that. This is from Scott Godfrey. So if you can contact us at the airport, I would be glad to try to get to the bottom of that. The best we checked every business out there when the shelter in place started, and some of them closed right away, and some of them took a week or 2 to close, and one of them we had to force to close. That we didn't close the businesses. What we said was you can't do flight training with an instructor and a student. It's not an essential activity, and we kind of got there. But if they have started to do that again, we need to know that. We're out there every day. The airport's open, so please contact us.
All right, this is the last question unless others have more. Thank you again for your response. Wouldn't it make sense to invest in Reid Hillview Airport due to the amount of aircraft and it being one of the busiest airports in the US? Maybe get another restaurant in the ops building, make it more up modern, or repave the remaining portions, hold more events, question mark.
Yeah, I mean, I think that at one time Reid Hillview Airport had a really thriving restaurant, and actually a lot of politicians in the valley used to go there, and it was a big east side spot. It fell into disrepair, and now that upper part of the airport building, it doesn't meet, the elevator doesn't work, and we couldn't get anybody to come in and spend the money to fix it up. They don't think they can make money. The staff has always been interested in making the airport, if we're going to operate the airport, we want to operate it well. We want to improve the airport. And I'm not trying to blame the Board of Supervisors, but I'm telling you that anything that the staff does it's not, we are following the direction of the Board of Supervisors. And we had a plan that we presented to the Board of Supervisors in December of 2018. There was a plan to keep the airport open, on operating well, and on good financial footing. And that plan involved taking grants. We recommended to the Board of Supervisors that we take grants and that we invest in the runways and we invest in the buildings. And if you look at my presentation, which I can share with you again, we kind of went through the plan, the capital improvement plan that we wanted to invest in with the Board of Supervisors. If you watch the board meeting of December 8th, 2018 and watch my item, you'll see me describe that plan, but that's not what the board decided to do. And that's their decision as policymakers, and so now we're implementing their direction. But if we're going to operate the airport, we want to operate it as a financially healthy and stable and well-managed operation. And that was our goal.
All right, next question. Does Reid Hillview Airport have a higher incidence of ground incursions than other airports of similar operations?
I don't believe that those types of comparisons are so Reid Hillview is a very busy airport. The incursions are all very specific. So, and I'd have to really ask somebody else smarter than me, but I don't believe that the FAA looks at incursions just in terms of total numbers. They like to report that to us, but I think it's very specific in whether or not they're repeatable incursions, meaning they're the exact same thing happening more than once, and if they're attributable to causes, like there's a correlation between a repeated incursion and either instructions, communication, driver training, aircraft training, aircraft disrepair, or ground control, including ground instructions via signage and striping. I don't really have a clear answer to that.
Okay, this one, thank you again for your response. Can you share those slides from the beginning of this meeting? I will also watch the board meeting on December 2018. And again, to everybody, I will share whatever links or slides are provided with me to everybody who registered. And so look for that email, if not tonight, tomorrow morning.
Yeah, so Juan, can I ask you a question? I have that presentation from 2018 that has the few slides that I used. That presentation is actually very long. It has probably about 25 slides in it. If I send that to you as a PDF, so I won't send it in PowerPoint because people won't be able to open it.
Sure.
If I send it to you as a PDF, can you distribute it to your group?
Yes.
Okay. I will do that this evening.
Okay.
So I will send the slides out. That's the answer to Lauren's question.
Yes, the slides and I know you've sent it, but the link to the video and the link to the survey so that more people can participate if they choose, that would be great.
Okay. All right. So then I see Jennifer asked, what for people who support the airport remaining open, how do we get the board to hear us? Well, you have to communicate with them and organize, just like all communities organize, communities that have interest. This is, I know that there's people on this call who have that strong interest of keeping the airport open, and I'm glad you're on this call. We're here to serve everybody, but we're also here to do what our bosses tell us. So be involved and communicate. with your representatives on the board. Educate yourself so that you know what's going on. That's my advice. What day in December from Maricela? No date yet, so we don't know the dates. Usually the dates for items coming forward to the board are announced about a week or two before, but we'll keep our mailing list totally apprised of when that date comes.
All right, so thank you, Harry. Thank you to everybody that participated. A follow-up email will be provided